Grunberg and Linder King are in the region to revive efforts of the truce. On the World War Orphans Day, Yemenis continue to struggle due to the conflict. Suffering of displaced people in Yemen aggravates as the new year sets in. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Shazad Dilbay. U.S. Envoy Tim Linder King and UN Envoy Hans Grunberg gave separate meetings with the chairman of the Presidential Leadership Council, Rashad Al-Alimi, to discuss the latest developments in Yemen and regional and international efforts to revive the truce. This report has more details.
The U.S. and the United Nations envoys to Yemen kicked off a visit to Riyadh to revive the stalled peace effort in the war-torn country. U.S. Envoy Tim Linder King and the United Nations Envoy Hans Grunberg held separate meetings with the chairman of the Presidential Leadership Council, Rashad Al-Alimi. An official said that Al-Alimi focused during both meetings on the latest developments in Yemen and regional and international efforts to revive peace amid the Iran-backed Houthi militias in transitions and threats to international energy routes. Al-Alimi underscored the Presidential Council and government's efforts in pursuit of peace and positive approach towards the United Nations-sponsored nationwide truce that was implemented from April to October 2022. He added that the Houthis refused to extend the truce, leading to its collapse. They followed up their rejection with terrorist attacks on port and oil facilities that are lifelines to millions of Yemenis. He stressed the importance of the international community taking measures to deter the Houthi terrorist threats and flagrant meddling of the Iranian regime in internal Yemeni affairs. He cited Tehran's smuggling of banned weapons to Yemen in an effort to transform the country into a platform to threaten international security and peace. The Presidential Council reiterated its commitment to establishing comprehensive and lasting peace in Yemen based on the agreed references. He expressed support to the U.S. and the United Nations peace efforts and all other efforts aimed at easing the humanitarian suffering of the Yemeni people and ending the Houthi coup. The Houthi, meanwhile, have continued to reject United Nations efforts to renew and expand the truce. Instead, they have threatened to again renew fighting on the battlefield and have threatened to carry out attacks on oil export ports in liberated regions. Last month, Houthi officials met with an Omani delegation that sought to persuade the militias to choose peace. On the ground, relative calm has prevailed at the battlefronts despite the collapse of the nationwide truce. How long this conflict will last if the Yemeni parties do not agree on renewing the truce? The truce will provide tangible relief to civilians and to create a conducive environment for reaching a peaceful settlement to the conflict through a comprehensive political process.
International Committee of the Red Cross said that many hospitals and water authorities are struggling with the growing cost of electricity. In addition, the committee has donated more than 2,000 spare parts for 30 generators powering 13 health facilities and water boards in Al Turba and Makha. The donations included Al Jumhari and Al Mudif hospitals in Taz. 4 soldiers were killed and others were injured after an explosion in Abiyan. In addition, local sources said that an explosive device was planted on a dirt road which exploded while military patrol was passing by. It added that there was another explosion in a water tank beside the patrol, causing damage.
يعني جاءت مفاجئة وكالعادة الأطفال يخرجوا يلعبوا ساعة كل يوم.
للأسف تم إبلاغنا بوفاة أحد الأطفال صباح اليوم نتيجة تفاقم حالته الصحية ودخوله في مضاعفات، فيما بقية الأطفال منهم لا زال تحت العلاج ومنهم من لا زال تحت الملاحظة.
يظل هذه الهدنة، يعني احنا الجوال كالعادة يخرجوا آمنين، هدنة ما فيش أي حاجة. سمعت القذيفة خرجت يعني كالمجنون أجري.
بعض الأطفال أصيبوا بشظايا في البطن، بعضهم في الرأس، بعضهم في الأطراف السفلية. حقيقة نحن نبذل مع المستشفى بحيث لا يتعرض هذول الأطفال إلى إعاقات دائمة قد تؤثر على حياتهم وتسبب لهم إعاقات مستقبلا.
Houthi militias' war in Yemen has resulted in millions of orphans. They suffer from poverty, hunger, and homelessness. This report has more details.
On the International Day for War Orphans, millions of Yemeni children have paid the price of the civil war in Yemen. Every day, children lose their parents, their source of income, and their right to life and security. Orphans are forced to live in refugee camps and deserts, suffering the cruelty of life and the bitterness of orphanhood. Hundreds of mothers have taken to the labor force, shouldering the financial responsibility of caring for their children. Meanwhile, some children have been compelled to leave school and work under risky circumstances, leaving them open to exploitation and abuse.
أصبحت المرأة اليمنية هي المربية.
The Yemeni woman is now the primary caretaker. We hope for the war's end so our children can live in peace.
Millions of children who lost their parents, their dreams, and their childhoods went through a great deal of anguish. They lead a life that is cloaked in fear and an uncertain future. Orphanhood, poverty, displacement, and the lack of attention from official institutions have left thousands of children prone to joining extremist movements in search of basic necessities, making them easy tools in the hands of terrorist groups. As such, the Houthi organization has pushed thousands of children to its front lines, viewing them as easy targets.
هؤلاء يتامى الحرب إن لم يتم استيعابهم.
War orphans must be compensated for what they've lost. Without proper guidance, many children may turn against the state in order to exact vengeance on a nation that has failed them.
Left without a breadwinner or monthly allowance, tens of thousands of families who once had a male figure now struggle to make ends meet. Due to these factors, thousands of orphans have taken to the streets in search of jobs to meet their basic requirements. The international community must prioritize the destruction wrought by the war in Yemen and the depth of the suffering endured by the majority of Yemeni families.
مع الاحتياج ومرارة اليتم ومرارة العوز تضطر.
Families without a male figure may push their children into workforce as basic necessities grow more expensive. Orphans are unable to live ordinary lives and attend school. We call upon concerned authorities to direct their attention to this faction of society.
According to UN figures, the war in Yemen has left more than 1 million children orphaned. The actual number is projected to be much higher. The incessant fighting has prevented an accurate monitoring of the numbers of orphans in Yemen and impeded efforts to help and alleviate their suffering.
Dozens of officers carried out a protest denouncing the failure of procedures for including them in military lists in Taz. The protests of the organized military comes after a series of protests to demand the PLC to pay their salaries that were cut off 7 years ago. Military staff who have not received their salaries suffer from difficult conditions due to the economic deterioration.
My name's Calvin Rice and I'm Halo's Director of Programs. I'm currently visiting the city of Taiz in Yemen. And I'm here just behind one of the front lines which is separating southern forces from the Houthis. The front line is literally about 250 meters from me on that hill. I've come to this area just to see how people are being affected by the conflict that's happened here over the last many years. And very sadly, what we're seeing is a place which has been very heavily damaged, but where fighting continues.
The Ministry of Defense warned travelers not to pass through desert roads east of Al Jawf. In addition, the ministry confirmed this line is a military zone from which it's forbidden to pass. The Yemeni army stated that these measures come from the interest of the safety and security of citizens and to ease their movement. A new year and the situation of the displaced is getting more complicated in Ma'rib camps, where displaced families lack food, shelter, and health in the absence of humanitarian and relief interventions. As-Suwaida camp is one of those camps that suffer from displacement. This report has more details.
This is the 9th new year in the life of the displaced people. After the year 2022 departed and carried with it great and distant pains, the most prominent of which were harsh natural factors, such as rain, torrential rains, extreme heat during summer, and extreme cold during winter, in addition to deadly diseases. It was a very difficult year for the displaced people. Hundreds of thousands of families were displaced by the war from their areas of origin looking for security and food, but they found nothing but more suffering and diaspora, as this child says in one of Ma'rib camps.
We've been here in Suwaida camp for several years now. We demand to go back to our homes and towns to live with glory and dignity. Here, we don't have the healthcare services or medicines. Patients here can't find a treatment when they get sick, in addition to the extreme cold weather that we are all suffering from.
This is Al-Suwaida camp west of Ma'rib. The beautiful thing about it is that it brought together different spectrums of Yemeni society that embodied true solidarity between families with different customs. As for the bad and sad thing, the camp summarizes all the pains of war and stories of displacement that the Houthi militia imposed on their lives. The Displaced People Unit says that the voices of distress from the displaced are increasing dramatically, while life opportunities inside the camps are becoming scarce, and interventions are almost cut off. With the increasing numbers of the displaced, while the capabilities are very limited.
We're displaced here in Ma'rib Governorate in the middle of the cold, strong winds and heavy rains. We've no shelter, electricity or water. The international organizations are not helping us at all. They come and build fragile tents for us. However, the winds and rains destroy them the next day. They also provide us with 500 liters of water for 7 days, which is not enough for us to drink, cook or shower.
8 years since the beginning of the war, the displaced have lived in the camps of Al-Suwaida, Al-Jufaina, Al-Samya, Al-Sit and other camps in Ma'rib, without any sign of returning to their areas in light of the cessation of the fighting. So the question remains, who will save those who are now paying the bill for the war in a country where many war merchants are fighting at the expense of the citizens?
Coming next in the news. Gulf Football Cup Championship opens today in the Iraqi city Basra.
ننزل ندي ماء من الغل والغل هذا بعيد، كنا ندي بالدواب نعبي ماء وترجعنا. ننزل الساعة 5 رجعنا الساعة 9.
ما يقلنا ظهر لأنه زحمة ما حد لي يخلي الجهل يغرق وإحنا تعبنا زيادة.
وكنت أحس صدري يوجعني وعز قدرك ركبي يوجعيني.
كنا بنستخدم حتى نغسل أولادنا يعني بأيام معدودة.
كنت أغيب على المدرسة لأن أنا كنت أروح الديمة.
حتى وإن كان يجي الأمطار تروح هدن لأنه ما في معيار الزحمة.
الوقت نشتري ب30,000 هي مع هستيلك ما يغلقش معها الشهر.
بس راح تطلب الله ولا أي حاجة عبلك كل شغلك الماء.
Welcome back. Gulf 25 Cup started with the participation of 8 teams divided into 2 groups. The opening match will be played between Iraqi team and its Omani counterpart, followed by the Yemeni national team and the Saudi team. This report has more details.
Iraq is hosting its first international soccer tournament in more than 4 decades, and for many Iraqis, the tournament that is about to kick off in the southern city of Basra offers a rare moment of joy and optimism. For many Iraqis, the first international soccer tournament their country is hosting in more than 4 decades is about a glimpse of hope in the southern city of Basra, amid the ravaged war that has been lasting for so many years, which waged the country a lot of souls and losses, the thing that Yemen is living through for 8 consecutive years. The 8-nation Arabian Gulf Cup starts today, with teams from the 6 Gulf Cooperation Council countries, which are Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, as well as Yemen and Iraq. It is the first time since 1979 that racked Iraq is home to the tournament. For 2 weeks, the matches will be a respite from all the violence, political and economic crises, as many fans and officials said. Decades of unrest and conflict have prompted a series of FIFA bans on Iraq from hosting international matches, which has forced the Iraqi team to play home games abroad since the US-led invasion in 2003 that exiled the previous president Saddam Hussein. Iraq has only played 3 competitive matches on home turf. And now soccer experts are predicting that if the 25th edition of the Gulf Cup goes smoothly, it could encourage FIFA to allow World Cup qualifiers to return to Baghdad. Years of conflict have prompted the Arab citizens to forget about happiness and optimism, as their thoughts are confined to how they would provide their families with food and shelter, and protect themselves from the fires of bullets and calamities of war.
The Yemeni rial recorded its lowest value in 9 months. In addition, this coincided with the Yemeni government's announcement of taking new decisions with the aim of rationalizing government spending and achieving stability for the national currency. The rial exceeded the selling of more than 1,000 riyals per dollar in Aden and the governorates under the control of the government. The Ministry of Communications and Information and the Governor of the Central Bank agreed to support the investment in communications sector. In addition, under the agreement, the telecommunications sector is going to benefit from the financing, chances to develop the digital infrastructure and the communication system. This project is encouraging investment chances, economic stability, and national development. The new building of Aden International Airport was opened with the latest devices and equipment. In addition, this came to implement the customs procedures followed in accordance with the customs law and to deal with all shipments arriving at the airport. The cash disclosure system for arriving and departing travelers through Aden International Airport was launched in coordination with the central bank. The Yemeni government signed a communication of understanding to establish a center for artificial parts in Ma'rib. The center will be built at a cost of 570,000 Kuwaiti dinars with direct funding from Kuwait over a period of 18 months. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. Grunberg and Linder King are in the region to revive efforts of the truce. On the World War Orphans Day, Yemenis continue to struggle due to the conflict. Suffering of displaced people in Yemen aggravates as the new year sets in. This is the end of the news. Thank you for watching.